Welcome back to Echoes of History. Tonight, we will walk slowly through the life of a medieval market town. Not in the rush of merchants and guards, not in the grand sweep of kings or battles, but in the quiet, steady unfolding of an ordinary day. It is a place you might have known if you had lived centuries ago, a place where trade, laughter, sweat, and quarrels mingled together like the scents of bread, smoke, and earth. The day begins before the sun itself is strong. The cobblestone. Square glisten faintly with dew, and shutters creak open one by one. Merchants step into the cool air, their arms laden with baskets, sacks, and bundles. Wooden stalls are unfolded, planks laid across barrels, cloth stretched to make shade. A baker sets down his loaves, their crust still steaming, while a farmer unties a cart brimming with apples, the scent of sweet fruit mixing with the heavier tang of onions and garlic. A potter kneels carefully, arranging jugs and bowls so. Tarple. The town exhales its first breath of the day. As the sun lifts, so too does the noise. Housewives arrive with baskets upon their hips, children clinging to their skirts. Voices rise in greeting, in demand, in dispute. Coins clink against wood, hands gesture wildly, arguments sharpen into laughter. The air grows thick with smells. Bread fresh from the oven, herbs crushed beneath boots, fish hauled in from the river. A shoemaker sets out a line of boots, their leather polished dark. Beside him, a butcher sharpens his cleaver with a rasp that scrapes through the air. The market swells until the square seems smaller than it is, pressed tight by sound and bodies. Everywhere there are faces, creased, smiling, frowning, weary. A cloth merchant unfurls a bolt of scarlet fabric, holding it high so the sun gleams across it. Women reach to touch, murmuring, laughing, bargaining with fierce precision. A boy stumbles by with a basket of eggs, one already cracked and dripping down. Leg. Children chase a runaway chicken, darting between legs and stalls, their laughter rising above the din. A fiddler begins to play in the corner, and the rhythm of his bow seems to stitch all the noise into something almost like music. By midday, the heat presses upon the town. The square smells sharper now. Meat roasting on spits, ale foaming in mugs, fish turning in the sun. A traveling spice merchant draws a crowd, his small chest open to reveal powders and grains have never seen. The scent of cinnamon and pepper drifts into the air, strange and almost magical. A monk sits quietly with a basket of herbs, murmuring cures to those who lean close. Two guards in chainmail pace slowly through the throng, their eyes sharp, their hands resting lightly upon their weapons. Yet even they cannot help but pause at a stall to taste cheese offered on the edge of a knife. As the afternoon wanes, the crowd begins to thin. Housewives carry their baskets home, heavy with bread, meat, and vegetables. Merchants pack away their wares, tying cloth and stacking barrels. Children, tired from the chase and the noise, slump against their mother's skirts. The fiddler tucks his bow away, the juggler pockets his balls, the storyteller folds his cloak. Slowly the market loosens its grip on the square, its thunder dwindling into a hum. But the day is not done. As evening falls, the taverns roar to life. Dice scatter across tables, mugs slam against wood, voices song and quarrel. A miller covered in flour laughs at a shepherd still smelling of sheep, while sailors in from the river boast of storms that would frighten kings. Outside, the square grows quiet, the cobbles empty save for the echo of boots, the flicker of torches, the bark of a distant dog. Night closes over the town. The stalls are bare, the carts drawn home, the market now only memory. Yet in the darkness, the smell of bread lingers, the scrape of cleavers and the clink of coins seems to hover, and the voices of the crowd echo faintly in the ear. Tomorrow it will begin again, as it always does, for a medieval market town never truly rests. It waits, patient, for the dawn. The market town is a living heart, and when it beats, the entire countryside listens. Its pulse is not in the stone of its walls, nor in the towers that rise above, but in the square itself, where every lane converges and every trade finds a voice. To walk through it on market day is to be swallow. Its rhythm, a rhythm as steady as the seasons, as relentless as the tolling of the church bell. Before the sun climbs high, the first shadows stretch long across the cobblestones. Merchants arrive early, dragging carts through the still quiet streets, their wheels groaning, their oxen snorting clouds into the cold air. Wooden stalls are unfolded with practiced hands, planks balanced across barrels, canvas stretched tight against poles, baskets laid out in neat rows. A baker, white with fleur, sets down his bread still steaming from the oven, arranging loaves in high pyramids that glisten in the first light. Beside him, a farmer heaves a sack of onions to the ground, the skins scattering like paper as he pulls them open. Slowly, the square fills. Housewives appear with baskets swinging at their sides, their skirts brushing the wet cobbles, their children trailing behind like restless birds. The fishmongers are first to raise their voices, calling out prices as they slap gleaming onto their boards, their hands dripping brine. Housewives press forward, poking, sniffing, haggling with voices sharp and precise. A boy lugs a basket of eggs, the shells clinking faintly, his eyes wide with the effort. One slips, cracks, and dribbles down his leg, and the crowd erupts in laughter. By the time the sun has cleared the rooftops, the square has become a storm. A butcher swings his cleaver with a loud crack, laying out cuts of meat while dogs circle hungrily at his feet. A cloth. Merchant unfurls a bolt of bright scarlet, holding it high so the light dazzles across its surface. Women reach eagerly to touch it, bargaining with such fervor that their laughter turns almost to argument. A potter stacks bowls and jugs in delicate towers, his hands careful, though always one piece seems ready to tumble. The smell of herbs drifts from a monk's basket, where he sits murmuring cures for coughs, fevers, and wounds, his voice low but steady. Children dart like. Press. One chases a runaway chicken, its feathers scattering, its wings flapping wildly as it weaves between boots and baskets. Another tugs at his mother's sleeve, pointing at a juggler who tosses wooden balls high into the air, catching them with exaggerated bows. A fiddler begins to play in the corner of the square, the bow rasping against strings until the sound rises above the din. Slowly, the rhythm of the market seems to move in time with the music, its chaos shaped into something awe. Like a dance, at midday the heat grows heavy and the air thickens with scent. Bread crusts crack in the sun, meat sizzles on spits, and the sharp tang of onions and garlic mixes with the brine of fish. A spice merchant draws a crowd, opening a small chest to reveal powders from distant lands. Cinnamon warm and sweet, pepper sharp enough to sting the nose, saffron glowing bright as flame. The crowd leans close, eyes wide, breaths drawn in wonder. For most, these scents are rarer. Reminder that the world beyond the town is vast and full of mysteries. Not far away, two guards in chainmail patrol slowly, their torches unlit, but their presence heavy. Their boots strike the cobbles with measured rhythm, their eyes scanning the crowd. Children stare up at them with awe, their small fingers pointing at the glint of steel. Yet even the guards cannot resist a pause at the cheese seller's stall, where they sample a wedge offered on the edge of a knife. Their stern faces soften. Briefly, before the rhythm of duty draws them onward. Around the edges of the square, quieter trades persist. A shoemaker bends low over a boot, hammering nails into the sole, his stall cluttered with leather and tools. A candle maker sets out rows of beeswax tapers, their yellow glow soft in the sunlight. Two old men sit upon a barrel, casting dice and muttering over the clatter, while others lean close to watch, their breaths sharp with hope or disappointment. In every corner, its own purpose, adding threads to the great weave of the day. As the afternoon wanes, the storm begins to loosen. Housewives carry baskets laden with bread, cheese, and herbs, their children trailing behind, sleepy and quiet now. Merchants fold their cloth, stack their jugs, tie their sacks. The butcher wipes his cleaver, the fishmonger splashes his boards with buckets of water, the juggler pockets his balls, the fiddler lays his bow to rest. Slowly the square empties, its noise fading, its Carbles bear once more. The scent lingers, the echoes cling, but the crowd dissolves into the lanes, yet the town does not sleep. As twilight falls, the taverns thunder alive. Dice scatter across tables, mugs slam down, foam spills onto the boards. Voices rise in song, rough and untrained but full of spirit, shaking the rafters with their force. A miller dusted white with flower laughs at a shepherd still smelling of sheep, their arms slung around each other's shoulders as they shout. Storyteller raises his voice above the noise, spinning tales of distant wars and wandering saints, his hands wide, his eyes bright. Some listen, some laugh, some argue, but all drink, for the tavern is the true heart of evening. Outside, the market square lies quiet beneath the glow of torches. The carbles shine faintly, the stalls folded, the air cooled. Lovers walk the edges, their steps soft, their voices low. Guards pace slowly, their torches burning steady, their shadows long ago. Walls, a thief slips unseen through the darkened lanes, his steps light, his hand quick. And above it all, the church bell tolls, deep and slow, marking the passing of the day. The medieval market town never truly rests. It exhales at dusk, it inhales at dawn, it beats in rhythm with the footsteps of its people. To walk its square is to be caught in its tide. The cries of merchants, the laughter of children, the scent of bread and herbs, the clink of coin, the scrape of cleaver. All pass. Fade, yet all remain, woven forever into the life of the town. And tomorrow, as always, it will begin again. The medieval market town does not simply live. It breathes, with lungs made of cobblestone streets and a heart that beats in the square. Its breath is steady and endless, drawn in with the dawn, released with the dusk, never once breaking the rhythm that binds peasants, merchants, and strangers alike. The morning stirs with a soft hum, faint at first, then growing as shutters, and carts begin to roll. Oxen snort, hooves clatter, and the first merchants make their way into the square. The baker arrives with loaves stacked in wicker baskets, their warmth steaming into the cool air. He lays them out in careful rows, crusts golden, the smell rich and comforting, drawing even the drowsiest townsfolk nearer. A farmer rattles in behind him, his cart filled with vegetables. Cabbages tight and green, onions sharp, garlic pungent, turnips pale against the wood. Wife hops down beside him, her voice already raised, ready to sell before a stall is even built. The square begins to bloom with stalls. Wooden frames rise quickly, cloth stretched across them for shade, planks balanced on barrels. Fishmongers lay out their catches, silver-scaled herring, thick cod, eels coiling in tubs. Housewives cluster close, their voices sharp, their fingers testing the gills, their coins clinking against wood. The butcher sharpens his cleaver, steel rasping against. His stall hung with cuts of pork and beef, the smell raw and heavy. Beside him, dogs pace restlessly, eyes fixed, tails twitching. The noise swells until it seems every stone in the square must tremble with it. Cloth merchants shout above the din, holding up bolts of crimson and blue. Women reach eagerly, stroking the fabric, their voices rising in bargaining laughter. A boy stumbles through the crowd, a basket of eggs in his arms, his eyes wide with strain. One egg breaks, dripping. Sleeve and the nearby peasants roar with laughter. A potter stacks bowls and jugs into a precarious tower, his hands trembling slightly as the crowd jostles against his stall. The scent of fresh bread mingles with the brine of fish, the tang of herbs, the sweat of animals, and the sweet trace of fruit. At the center of the square, a fiddler begins to play. The bow screeches at first, but soon the melody finds its rhythm. The notes weave through the noise, and the market, chaotic though it is, seems to fall into time with the tune. A juggler sets his wooden balls spinning into the air, bowing extravagantly as children cheer. A storyteller raises his voice, weaving a tale of saints and storms, his hands sketching vast images in the air. For a moment, the market feels less like labor and more like a festival, a place where laughter outweighs toil. By midday, the air grows heavy. Bread turns hard on the boards, meat sweats in the sun, and the sharpness of onions and gall. Eyes, yet still the square teems with life. A spice merchant draws the largest crowd of the day, lifting the lid of a small chest to reveal strange powders from distant lands. Cinnamon rich and sweet, pepper that makes men sneeze, saffron glowing gold. The people lean close, wide-eyed, their hands trembling with wonder, though few can afford such treasures. A monk sits quietly nearby, selling herbs for coughs and fevers, murmuring instructions in a calm voice that is often drowned out. Shouts of haggling. Not far away, a pickpocket works silently, his hands quick and sure. A purse is lifted from a distracted merchant's belt, a coin pouch disappears into a sleeve, yet the market's roar covers every theft. Guards patrol slowly through the crowd, their chainmail glinting, their eyes sharp, yet they too pause at stalls, sipping from mugs, tasting slices of cheese offered on knives. Duty and desire mingle as naturally as salt in water. Afternoon begins its long. Market loosens. Housewives head home with baskets brimming bread, cheese, cabbages, onions, meat wrapped in cloth. Merchants stack what remains, tying cloth, folding fabric, sealing barrels. A shoemaker tucks away his tools, a potter wraps his wares in straw, the fiddler rests his bow. The noise ebbs slowly, like a tide withdrawing, until the square is no longer a storm but a steady hum. Twilight falls, and with it comes the tavern's thunder. Mugs slam, dice scatter, voices roar. Coated in flour throws his arms around a shepherd, both shouting a song loud enough to rattle the shutters. A juggler entertains again, this time not with balls but with knives, his audience cheering drunkenly. The air is thick with smoke, sweat, ale, and laughter, a storm of its own contained within wooden walls. Beyond the taverns, the square lies empty, save for torchlight flickering across the cobblestones. Lovers walk hand in hand, their voices soft, their steps slow. Guards pace with weary eyes, their torches burning low. A thief slips through the shadows, unseen, his footsteps silent. And high above, the church bell tolls slow and deep, as if reminding all that time itself watches over the town. The medieval market town does not rest so much as it pauses, drawing in a breath before the next day begins. The smells linger, the echoes cling, the rhythm remains. And when dawn returns, so too will the merchants, the laughter, the bargaining, the quarrels, and the songs. The square is eternal, as endless as the turning of the seasons, as steady as the sound of boots on stone. The medieval market town, when viewed not as a single day but as a cycle, is like a wheel forever turning. Each morning begins with silence, each noon swells into thunder, each evening fades into quiet embers. Yet within that cycle lie the countless small details that bind life together. The gestures of hands, the sound of voices, the smell of bread, the scrape of tools. Marketplace into the very heartbeat of a community. The day begins again with merchants stirring before the sun. Their boots scuff against cobblestones still wet with dew, their voices low but determined. Carts creak as oxen heave, the air puffing from their nostrils in white clouds. Wooden stalls rise like skeletons across the square, their beams slotted together, cloth stretched tight to make shade for the hours to come. The baker's apprentice stumbles under the weight of a tray stacked high. With loaves, each crust golden, each one still steaming, he sets them down with a sigh, his cheeks flushed with heat, his hands dusted white with flour. By the time the bell in the church tower tolls, The first wave of housewives has already arrived. Their baskets swing at their sides, their shawls pulled tight against the chill. They walk with purpose, voices quick and sharp as they descend upon the stalls. A fishmonger slaps down a writhing eel, its body gleaming in the light, and the crowd surges forward to touch, to question, to argue. Coins clink, voices clash, laughter bursts, and the market swells alive, louder with each moment. The square fills to bursting. A farmer shouts from the back of his cart as he lifts sacks of onions, their skins scattering like dry leaves. His wife balances a bundle of herbs in her arms, shouting over the noise to call attention to their freshness. Children weave through the legs of the crowd, giggling as they chase a runaway chicken that wildly, feathers scattering into the air. A potter kneels carefully, stacking jugs into a neat row, his hands shaking slightly each time the crowd bumps against his stall. At the center of it all, the entertainers claim their corner. A fiddler scrapes out a lively tune, his bow leaping across strings, his foot stamping to keep time. A juggler tosses wooden balls into the air, his movements exaggerated, his bow so deep that even the grumpiest peasant cracks a smile. A storyteller. Voice above the din, his words painting saints and giants, his hands moving as though shaping the story in the air itself. Children gape, their mouths open in wonder, while adults pause only briefly before the rhythm of trade pulls them onward again. By midday, the smells are overwhelming. Fish gleam on wooden boards, their eyes glassy in the sun. Meat sweats in the heat, its scent heavy and raw. Bread hardens on the tables, its crust thick, while wheels of cheese release a pungent drift faintly, carried by a traveling merchant with a small chest of treasures. Cinnamon rich and sweet, pepper sharp and sneezing, saffron like sunlight caught in a powder. The people crowd close, inhaling deeply, their faces awed even as they shake their heads at the price. For most, such scents are not for buying but for remembering. Guards march slowly through the crowd, their chainmail rattling softly, their torches unlit, but their hands never far from their swords. Children stop, their eyes wide, their fingers reaching as though to touch the shimmer of steel. One guard accepts a slice of cheese, nodding in thanks before moving on, his stern face softened by the simple pleasure. Yet in the shadows of the square, a pickpocket works unseen, his hands sliding deftly across belts, his fingers quick as breath. The market holds not only trade but risk, and every crowd draws both the honest and the sly. In the late afternoon, the square begins to ease. Housewives head, baskets laden heavy, their children weary and dragging their feet. Merchants fold cloth, stack barrels, wrap wares in straw. The fiddler rests his bow, the juggler tucks away his props, the storyteller lowers his voice. The noise dwindles, the heat fades, and the square once again reveals its stones, emptying of its storm. Only echoes remain, the smell of bread, the sharpness of onions, the clink of coins. But as evening comes, the taverns burst alive. Inside, dice clatter, mugs slam. Roar. Songs rise in rough chorus. Sailors and peasants alike stamping their feet, their laughter spilling out into the street. A miller covered in flour and a shepherd smelling of sheep lean against one another, bellowing a tune neither quite remembers. A juggler entertains once more, this time not for children but for men flushed red with ale. Smoke thickens in the rafters, candles flicker low, and the noise swells until it feels as though the tavern itself might burst. Outside, the market. Square lies quiet, lit only by torchlight. Guards pace slowly, their boots echoing, their shadows long. Lovers walk hand in hand, their whispers low, their faces lit by the glow of the flames. Thieves move in silence, their steps cautious, their hands quick. Dogs curl on doorsteps, their tails twitching in sleep. And above it all, the church bell tolls once more, deep and slow, marking the close of another day. The medieval market town does not fade with night. It pauses, breath, For the dawn when it will exhale again. The stalls will rise, the voices will return, the scents and sounds will fill the air, and the wheel will turn once more. For in the square all life is bound to the same rhythm, the rhythm of trade, of laughter, of quarrel and song, a rhythm as old as the stones themselves. The market town, when dusk yields to darkness, does not vanish, it transforms. The clamor of the day retreats, yet its memory lingers in the air, like smoke after a fire. The cobblestones, worn smooth by countless boots, hold the echo of merchants' cries, of laughter, of haggling voices sharp as knives. And though the square lies empty, the rhythm of its life is not broken. It only shifts, preparing for another day to unfurl. In the early hours before dawn, silence hangs heavy, but it is not complete. Somewhere in the dark, a baker stirs his ovens, the faint glow of embers brightening into flame. The smell of bread creeps softly into the still air, long. First cock crows. Down narrow lanes, merchants rouse themselves, tying cloaks against the chill, their hands brushing dust from baskets, their minds already busy with prices and bargains yet to be struck. Oxen snort in their stalls, shifting impatiently as carts are readied, wheels groaning under fresh weight. As the sky softens into grey, the town begins to stir in earnest. Boots strike the stones, voices murmur low, and the first stalls creak open in the square. Wooden planks. Barrels, cloth stretched overhead, baskets are pended onto tables. A farmer spreads apples across his boards, their skins glistening with dew. A woman lays out herbs, the sharp scent of rosemary and thyme spilling into the air. The butcher hangs his cuts carefully, his cleaver flashing once as he tests its edge. The potter stacks his jugs and bowls into precarious towers, his eyes narrowing each time they wobble. By the time the sun has risen fully, the marketplace has become a tide. Fishermen slap down their catches, herring silver, card thick and heavy, eels twisting in tubs of water. Housewives surge forward, their baskets ready, their voices raised in demands, their coins held tight in fists. A boy with a sack of onions stumbles through the press, his steps clumsy, skins scattering across the cobblestones like brittle parchment. Children dart about, chasing one another, their laughter mingling with the sharper cries of merchants. The square heaves with motion, and every sense is consumed at once. Eyes dazzled by color, ears battered by noise, noses filled with scent. Entertainment punctuates the labor. A fiddler draws his bow in the corner, his tune quickening the pace of the day. A juggler tosses wooden balls high into the air, his arms spreading wide with a flourish as children clap and squeal. A storyteller holds a circle of listeners, his voice rising above the din as he recounts tales of saints and dragons, his hands carving vast images in the space biff. A moment, the square is not only trade but theater, a stage where daily life and imagination mingle. At midday, the air thickens, heavy with heat and smell. Bread lies stiff on boards, meat sweats, fish grows sharper in scent, yet still the people come. A spice merchant opens his chest and the crowd surges near. Cinnamon, pepper, cloves, saffron, treasures from lands few will ever see, their aromas strange and intoxicating. The price is steep, the coins hard to part, deep as though the smell alone were worth the cost. Not far off, a monk sits cross-legged with a basket of herbs, his voice calm as he describes cures for coughs and fevers. Few pause to listen, for the market's roar drowns his words, but those who do lean in close, their faces hopeful, their hands tight upon small coins. Guards move steadily through the square, chainmail glinting, their eyes sharp yet never blind to the temptations of the stalls. One accepts a wedge of cheese with her. Another pauses to drink from a mug pressed into his hand. Even duty bends beneath the weight of daily life. Afternoon wanes, and with it, the storm of voices begins to subside. Housewives clutch baskets heavy with bread, meat, herbs, and cloth, their children trailing with tired steps. Merchants fold cloth, pack sacks, tie bundles, their voices quieter now, their eyes heavy. The fiddler rests his bow, the juggler pockets his tools, the storyteller lowers his voice to a murmur. The square loosens, exhales, returns to its stones, yet still it does not fall silent, only softer, only slower, as if it too grows weary. Twilight spreads its gold across the rooftops, and the taverns blaze awake. Inside, mugs slam, dice scatter, voices roar in laughter and song. A shepherd smelling of sheep and a miller white with flour stand shoulder to shoulder, shouting a tune until their throats rasp. A blacksmith stamps his foot in rhythm, the floor shaking beneath him. A juggler returns. Craft, knives this time instead of balls, the crowd cheering with drunken glee. Smoke curls into the rafters, candles flicker, and the storm of the tavern rivals the storm of the day. Outside, the square lies in hush. Torches glow, their flames wavering against the night air. Lovers walk in pairs, their voices soft, their hands entwined. Guards patrol in steady rhythm, boots echoing against the stones. In shadows, thieves move unseen, their steps cautious, their hands quick. Dogs curl against doorways, ears twitching in sleep. Above, the church bell tolls, deep and slow, carrying across rooftops, reminding all of the passing hours. And so the cycle holds. The market town does not sleep so much as it waits, drawing its breath deep, ready to exhale once more with the dawn. Tomorrow the stalls will rise again, the merchants will shout, the children will laugh, and the taverns will thunder. The rhythm is eternal, as steady as the turning of the seasons, as unbroken as the stone beneath. The square, the medieval market town, endures like a living tide, its energy washing over cobblestones, filling narrow lanes, and spilling into the hearts of all who walk its square. To those who rise with the dawn, it is toil. To those who drift into the tavern at dusk, it is laughter. To all, it is the rhythm that governs their lives, steady as the seasons, patient as the passing of years. Before the first streak of sunlight glows in the east, the preparations are already underway. The bay kneads dough in silence, the only sound the slap of hands against the table, the crackle of the fire in the oven. Flour clings to his hair, dusts his lashes, softens his coat into pale gray. In the dim light, he shapes loaves, setting them to rise one after another, until the room itself smells of warm grain and promise. Elsewhere, the butcher sharpens his cleaver, each scrape of steel against stone echoing like a heartbeat. He arranges hooks, cleans boards, lays out cloths, all. Precision of one who knows his day will begin with a flood of eager, hungry hands. In the barns at the town's edge, farmers hitch oxen to carts. Wheels creak under the weight of sacks filled with onions, cabbages, apples, and grain. Chickens cluck nervously in their cages. Goats bleat as ropes are tied. Sheep shift and stamp. The journey into town is slow, the carts groaning, the men and women walking beside them, voices low and steady in the morning air. By the time they reach the sky has begun to brighten, and the first bell tolls from the church tower, deep and resonant, calling the town awake. The square is alive within moments. Stalls rise swiftly, their wooden frames fitted together with a clatter of hammers, their canvases stretched taut against the poles. Merchants arrange baskets of apples so that each one gleams, stack loaves into pyramids, lay herbs in fragrant bundles that spill their scent into the air. A fishmonger empties his tubs with a splash. See? Herring tumbling onto boards, their scales gleaming like coins. Housewives surge forward, skirts brushing cobblestones, baskets swinging, voices already sharp with the thrill of bargaining. Noise swells into thunder. The shoemaker bends low, nails clenched in his teeth as he hammers soles onto boots. A potter arranges his bowls and jugs, tapping each with a careful finger to hear the clear ring of unbroken clay. A cloth merchant holds up a bolt of bright blue linen, its colors. The gray of stone, women reaching eagerly to touch it, to measure it against their sleeves. Dogs circle the butcher's stall, tails wagging, eyes fixed upon dripping cuts of pork. A boy tumbles through the crowd with a basket of eggs, nearly falling as children chase a runaway chicken, feathers scattering like snow. The air is thick with scent, bread crust hot and sharp, fish pungent and briny, herbs sweet and sharp, animals musky and alive. A spice merchant opens a chest no larger. Shoes, and yet the air shifts. Cinnamon rich and warm, pepper sharp and biting, saffron golden and strange. Each smell a whisper from lands most here will never see. The people press close, their eyes wide, their hands hovering though their purses stay shut. To breathe is to travel, if only for a heartbeat. Amid the clamor, music rises. A fiddler in the corner scrapes a tune, the bow rasping yet lively, his foot stamping time upon the stones. A juggler tosses balls into the air, his grin stretched broad. Children clap, their voices high, their laughter ringing clear above the thunder. A storyteller lifts his voice, weaving saints and dragons, his gestures vast, his words tumbling quick, and even those who pass without stopping carry a fragment of the tale away with them. By midday, the square is thick with heat. Meat sweats on hooks, bread stiffens on boards, fish turns sharp beneath the sun. Still the crowd surges, haggling louder, laughing harder, shouting until the air itself vibrates with sound. Guards patrol with measured pace, chainmail clinking softly, their torches unlit but their eyes alert. Children gaze at them in awe, their small fingers pointing at the shimmer of steel. And yet the guards, too, cannot resist the pull of the square. A slice of cheese pressed into one's hand, a sip of ale from a grateful merchant. Duty and daily life blur until they are one. By late afternoon, the rhythm begins to slow. Housewives clutch baskets full. Brims, bread, onions, wheels of cheese, cuts of meat wrapped in cloth. Children drag their feet, weary from the chase, their laughter fading into yawns. Merchants stack what remains, folding cloth, packing sacks, tying bundles tight. The fiddler lays his bow aside, the juggler pockets his balls, the storyteller lowers his voice into silence. Slowly the storm dissipates, leaving only the cobbles beneath, scattered with husks, skins, and feathers. Twilight softens the edges of the town. Smoke drifts from chimneys, carrying the scent of suppers, stews rich with herbs, bread toasted dark, meat sizzling upon spits. The market square grows quiet, its stones washed in the glow of torches. Lovers wander arm in arm, their voices soft, their steps slow. Guards pace steady, their shadows long across the stones. A thief slips through the dark, his hand quick, his eyes sharp, his footsteps swallowed by the night. And then, as darkness deepens, the tavern surges alive. Dice clatter, voices roar. A shepherd smelling of sheep and a miller powdered in flour shout songs until their throats rasp raw. A fiddler plays again, this time with more fire than finesse, his bow scraping wildly as feet stamp against the wooden floor. Laughter rises, arguments flare, mugs are raised, and the storm within the tavern rivals the storm that filled the square. Outside, the night settles fully, but the market town does not sleep. It rests, yes, but even in silence the rhythm continues. Tolls deep and steady. The stones hold the day's echo. The air carries its scent. And when dawn comes again, the cycle will begin anew, unbroken, eternal, as sure as the seasons, as steady as the breath of the town itself. The market town wears its rhythm like a cloak. From the outside, one might imagine it chaotic. Noise piled upon noise, voices colliding, footsteps relentless. But to those within it, the pattern is as natural as the turning of the earth. There is order within the storm, and that order is what makes the market not just a gathering of stalls, but the very engine of life itself. Before light touches the rooftops, the first sounds creep across the cobblestones. The groan of cart wheels, the low grunt of oxen, the soft rasp of shutters opening. A farmer trudges in with his wife, their cart sagging with cabbages still wet from the field. He heaves the sacks down, the thud echoing while she sets baskets of herbs onto a plank, her fingers already arraying. Green bundles. From another street comes the clatter of wooden barrels, a brewer rolling casks of ale toward the tavern, his shoulders straining with the effort. By the time the church bell tolls its first morning call, the square has grown a forest of stalls. Planks balanced across barrels, cloth stretched overhead to block the sun, ropes tightened, baskets tipped out across the boards. The butcher strings up cuts of pork, the cleaver flashing in his hand as he works. The potter lays out, in lines that shimmer faintly with glaze. A shoemaker kneels in the dust, hammering nails into a boot sole, his stall scattered with tools, leather, and thread. The square exhales, the market breathes, and the people come. At first it is the housewives, their baskets light, their shawls pulled close. They stride quickly, voices sharp, coins clutched tightly in their hands. They stop to press fish with knowing fingers, to taste a slice of cheese on the edge of a knife, to tug fabric and shake. Their heads at the price. Children trail behind, wide-eyed and restless, tugging at sleeves, chasing one another in darting bursts. A boy with a basket of eggs trips on a loose cobblestone, stumbling forward, one egg cracking and dripping yellow down his arm. Laughter erupts, good-natured, even from the merchants who will soon have to sweep the mess away. As the sun climbs, the square swells. Merchants shout, each voice rising to outdo the next. A fishmonger slaps down a gleaming, scales shining like silver. A farmer shouts the virtues of his apples, stacking them high until one tumbles free and rolls beneath a stall. A cloth merchant spreads out a bolt of crimson, the color blazing in the light, drawing women to reach, to touch, to argue, their voices sharp and quick. A juggler tosses wooden balls high into the air, his grin wide, his bows deep, while a fiddler draws a tune from his strings that lifts the noise into something like rhythm. The air thickens with smell, bread hot and crisp, herbs sharp and green, onions pungent, garlic heavy, fish briny and raw. Meat sweats in the sun, dogs pacing beneath the butcher's stall, their eyes fixed, their tails twitching. A spice merchant draws the boldest crowd, opening his chest to release scents strange and intoxicating, cinnamon sweet, pepper sharp, saffron glowing like flame. The people lean close, their eyes wide, their hands twitching toward their purses even as they hesitate. To smell. Dreams are cheaper than coin. At midday, the square feels less like a place and more like a tide. Voices crash against each other, laughter and argument blending until they are one. Guards move through slowly, their chainmail glinting, their eyes sharp, their hands resting on hilts. Children point at them, whispering with awe, tugging at their mothers to look. A thief slips unseen through the throng, his hand deft, his step light, his smile hidden. A monk sits quietly near the fountain, his basket of herbs at his side, his voice soft as he offers cures for fevers, for coughs, for aching bones. Few pause to listen, for the market drowns his words, but those who do bow their heads with hope. By late afternoon, the storm begins to ease. The crowd thins, housewives walking home with baskets heavy, children drooping with sleep. Merchants fold cloth, pack jugs in straw, tie sacks with careful knots. The butcher wipes his cleaver, the fishmonger splashes his boards with juggler pockets his tools, the fiddler lays his bow to rest. The noise dwindles, the heat softens, and the square exhales its last breath of the day. Evening brings a different rhythm. Smoke rises from chimneys, stews simmer with herbs and meat, bread hardens on hearths. The taverns roar, their doors flung open, their air thick with ale and sweat. Dice scatter across tables, mugs slam against wood, voices rise in song and in quarrel. A shepherd and a miller shout a tune together, stamping there. Boots until the floor shakes. A fiddler plays once more, his tune faster now, his bow scraping wildly as men clap and women laugh. The tavern is the market's echo, louder, rougher, but born of the same need for voices to mingle. Outside, the square lies in hush, torchlight flickering across the stones. Lovers walk slowly, their steps soft, their whispers hidden in the dark. Guards pace in steady rhythm, their torches casting long shadows. Dogs curl into doorways, ears twitching in sleep. Move silently, their eyes sharp, their footsteps swallowed by the dark. Above it all, the church bell tolls, its sound heavy and slow, reminding the town that time itself never ceases its march. And so the market waits. It has given its breath for the day, and now it holds it, still and patient, until the dawn comes again. The stalls will rise, the merchants will shout, the people will laugh and quarrel, the taverns will roar. The wheel will turn as it always has, as it always will. The stone beneath the square. The market town is not built of stone alone. It is woven from sound, from smell, from the endless shuffle of boots and the constant rasp of voices. The walls, the roofs, the gates, they are bones. But the flesh, the blood, the soul of the place is the marketplace itself, swelling and receding like the tide, shaping every life within reach of its square. The cycle begins in silence. In the hour before dawn, the square is a hollow cavern of stone and shadow. The fountain at its center whispers faintly, water spilling into its basin, the sound sharp in the still air. The cobblestones, slick with dew, glimmer faintly in the starlight. Then comes the first creak of a cart wheel, the low grunt of oxen straining against harness, the measured steps of farmers leading their loads in from the fields. The silence splinters into sound. The baker's boy stumbles into the square with a tray of loaves balanced on his shoulder, each crust browned and crackling, each one breathing steam into the cool air. He yawns, his eyes half shut, but his hands are steady as he sets the loaves upon the stall. A farmer follows with sacks of onions, the skins rattling as he empties them in a heap, the smell sharp and biting. His wife spreads herbs across a plank, arranging sprigs of rosemary, sage, and thyme into small bundles. A butcher slaps his cleaver onto wood, its edge already gleaming, and begins to hang cuts of pork from his hooks. By the tower rooftops, the square has burst alive. Housewives stride in with baskets on their arms, their children trailing, their eyes sharp with purpose. Voices rise in greeting, in demand, in quarrel. A fishmonger slaps down a card so thick it bends his board, water spraying into the air. Housewives lean close, prodding, sniffing, arguing with fierce precision, their coins clinking as they change hands. A boy with a basket of eggs stumbles, one egg cracking in his palm, yolk dripping through his fin. As the crowd laughs and jeers, a potter arranges bowls and jugs, tapping each one with a finger to test its ring, the sound lost in the thunder of trade. The noise climbs into a storm. A cloth merchant unfurls a bolt of deep blue, holding it high so that sunlight glitters across its weave. Women surge forward, touching, measuring against their sleeves, voices sharp with bargaining. A spice merchant draws gasps as he opens his chest, revealing powders of cinnamon, pepper, cloves. The smells spill into the air, rich and intoxicating, like whispers from distant shores. A crowd gathers close, their faces glowing with wonder, though most hands hesitate to part with coin. A monk sits quietly near the fountain, offering herbs to those who pause to listen, his words nearly drowned by the tumult. The entertainers weave themselves into the fabric of the day. A fiddler plays in the corner, his bow rising and falling, his foot stamping out a rhythm that seems to tether the quay. A juggler tosses wooden balls into the air, his arms wide, his bow so exaggerated that even the weariest peasants grin. A storyteller raises his voice above the noise, speaking of saints and storms, of kings and miracles, his gestures painting shapes in the air. Children cluster near him, their eyes wide, their mouths open, even as the tide of the crowd surges around them. By midday, the heat presses upon the square. Bread hardens on boards, meat sweats on hooks, fish grows. Circle hungrily, their eyes fixed on the butcher's stall. Cats slip between barrels, tails twitching, their eyes bright as they hunt scraps. Housewives fan themselves with their shawls, their cheeks flushed, their baskets heavy. Guards patrol in slow rhythm, their chainmail glinting, their hands resting near their swords. Children stare at them with awe, their small fingers pointing, their voices whispering as though these men were giants. Yet even the guards cannot resist the square, a wedge of cheese pressed into their hands, a sip of ale lifted gratefully to their lips. Amid the tumult, life unfolds in small details. Two old men crouch over a barrel, casting dice, muttering curses and prayers with each roll. A shoemaker bends low over his work, hammer in hand, sweat dripping onto the leather. A candle maker sets out rows of beeswax tapers, their soft glow catching the light, a reminder of warmth and prayer. A miller dusted white with flour bargains for grain. Pale marks upon every surface he touches. Each act, small and ordinary, binds itself into the greater rhythm, the great storm of the day. As afternoon wanes, the storm begins to ebb. Housewives gather their children, baskets heavy with bread, cheese, meat, and herbs. Merchants fold cloth, tie sacks, pack barrels. The fiddler rests his bow, the juggler pockets his balls, the storyteller lowers his voice to a murmur. The square exhales, the thunder fading into silence, the cobblestones. Once more beneath the hush, yet the smell lingers. Bread and fish, onions and herbs, the faint trace of spice, clinging to the air as though the market itself refuses to release its hold. When twilight spreads across the rooftops, the taverns ignite. Dice scatter across tables, mugs slam against wood, voices roar with laughter and quarrel. A fiddler plays once more, his tune faster, rougher, his bow scraping wildly as men stamp their feet. A juggler tosses knives this time, his audience. Drunken cheers. A shepherd and a miller shout a song together, their arms slung across each other's shoulders, their voices rasping with ale. The tavern is a storm of its own, a mirror of the market, fueled not by trade but by ale, smoke, and song. Outside, the square lies still beneath torchlight. Shadows stretch long, the air cool, the stone silence save for the steady tread of guards. Lovers walk hand in hand, their whispers low, their steps soft. A thief slips through the dark, his hand quick, his eyes sharp, his body melting into shadow. Dogs curl upon doorsteps, their tails twitching in sleep. Above, the church bell tolls, heavy and slow, a reminder that time itself keeps watch over the town. And when dawn comes again, the cycle will begin anew. The baker will rise, the butcher will sharpen, the farmers will roll their carts through the gates. The stalls will grow like trees across the square, the storm will swell, the tavern will roar, and the town will breathe once more. For the market is eternal, its rhythm does not falter. It is the heart of the medieval town, steady as the seasons, endless as the stone beneath its feet. The medieval market town is not only a place of buying and selling, it is the mirror in which the entire community sees itself. To walk its square on market day is to glimpse every thread of life, work and play, hunger and laughter, piety and mischief, woven together into a single tapestry stretched across cobblestones and sky. In the hour before sunrise, the square lies hushed, though not entirely empty. A baker's boy hurries across with baskets balanced against his chest, each one smelling faintly of yeast and smoke. Behind him, a brewer rolls a cask toward the tavern door, the wood thumping against the stone with each turn. From distant fields, the lowing of oxen carries, growing louder as carts creak toward the gate. Merchants call softly to their beasts, urging them forward, the sound muffler. Though even their voices know the day will be long. By the time the church bell tolls its first note, the square is a hive of activity. Farmers unload crates of apples, their skins still damp with dew, and stack them in neat pyramids. Women spread out bundles of herbs, their sharp sense of time, sage, and parsley rising into the air like incense. A butcher hangs cuts of meat upon hooks, wiping his cleaver against a rag before driving its edge once more across a whetstone. Clear, a promise of the day's labor. The sun rises fully, and with it comes the flood. Housewives stride into the square, their baskets swinging, their voices quick and purposeful. Children dart behind them, already distracted by the swirl of sound and color. A fishmonger slaps a gleaming card onto his stall, water spraying across the boards, while gulls circle above, their cries sharp against the din. A potter arranges his jugs into tall, teetering towers, his hands trembling eat. Brushes too close. The cloth merchant holds aloft a bolt of green so bright it seems to catch fire in the light. Women press close, fingering the weave, shaking their heads at the price, their voices rising until they seem to argue more with each other than with him. The air thickens with smells. Bread warm and sharp, fish pungent, onions biting, meat heavy, herbs sweet, animals musky, and from one corner the faint spice of cinnamon and cloves. The spice merchant draws a crowd. Opened like a treasure box, he pinches powders between his fingers, letting the people sniff, their faces alight with wonder even as they clutch their purses shut. To smell is to imagine, and imagination costs nothing. Voices pile upon voices until the market becomes a storm. A boy stumbles beneath the weight of a sack of grain, spilling a trail behind him. Two women haggle furiously over onions, their arms waving, their brows furrowed, until one bursts into laughter and their quarrel dissolving into smiles. A fiddler in the corner scrapes out a tune, his bow quick, his foot stamping, the melody threading through the noise like a seam. A juggler tosses balls into the air, bowing low, his grin wide, children squealing with delight as they clap. A storyteller raises his voice, painting giants and saints into the air with words, his arms spread wide, his eyes alight. By midday, the square is a sea. The heat presses, the smells grow stronger, meat sweating fit. Turning, bread stiffening on the boards, dogs pace beneath the butcher's stall, their tongues lolling, their eyes fixed. Cats slip between barrels, tails twitching, paws light as shadows. Guards patrol in slow rhythm, their chainmail glinting, their boots striking stone in measured pace. Children stare wide-eyed, their voices hushed in awe, their fingers pointing. Yet even the guards cannot resist the pull. One accepts a slice of cheese, another sips from a mug. For in the marketplace even, duty bends beneath the weight of daily life. Amid the noise, small dramas unfold. A pickpocket slides a purse from a merchant's belt, vanishing into the press before his absence is noted. Two old men squat upon a barrel, casting dice, muttering curses with each unlucky throw. A miller coated white in flour haggles for grain, his palms leaving pale prints on the boards. A shoemaker bends low, his hammer striking steady, his stall scattered with scraps of leather. Each detail binds itself to the greater storm, as inseparable from the day as the toll of the bell above. As afternoon wanes, the tide begins to ebb. Housewives carry baskets heavy with loaves and herbs, wheels of cheese, strips of cloth. Children trail behind them, their energy spent, their eyes drooping, their laughter softened into yawns. Merchants pack slowly, folding cloth, tying sacks, stacking crates. The fiddler lays aside his bow, the juggler pockets his tools, the storyteller lowers his voice. Into silence, the square exhales, its thunder fading into hush, the cobblestones revealed once more beneath the weight of evening. Twilight falls and smoke curls from chimneys. The taverns burst alive. Dice scatter across tables, mugs slam, voices roar. A shepherd smelling of sheep and a miller dusted white with flour throw arms about each other's shoulders, their voices rough as they shout a tune. A fiddler plays again, his song quicker, sharper, while men stamp their boots and women laugh. Juggler tosses knives this time, his audience roaring drunken cheer. The tavern is chaos, yet it is the chaos of belonging, of lives pressed together by need and joy alike. Beyond the taverns, the square lies quiet, lit only by torchlight. Lovers wander with hands entwined, their whispers soft against the hush. Guards march with slow steps, their shadows long against the walls. A thief melts into the dark, his footsteps light, his eyes sharp, his hand quick. Dogs curl upon doorstep, twitching in sleep. The church bell tolls, its voice deep and steady, carrying into the night as though reminding the town that time itself keeps vigil. And when dawn returns, the wheel will turn again. Stalls will rise, voices will clash, bread will steam, fish will gleam, spice will whisper, and song will stitch the noise into something more. The market town is not a day, nor a year, nor even a lifetime. It is an endless rhythm, steady as the earth, eternal as the stone beneath the square. The market town holds within it a kind of permanence, even as its life changes from hour to hour, day to day, season to season. The stalls may be taken down, the baskets emptied, the taverns stilled by sleep, but the memory of the market never vanishes. It lingers in the air, in the walls, in the very stones beneath the feet of those who pass. To live within the town is to know its rhythm, to breathe with it, to wake and sleep according to its pulse, before the sun climbs above the hearth. Merchants are already awake. A baker kneads dough by the dim light of a lantern, his arms dusted white, his breath heavy with effort. Each loaf is shaped with the same patient care, set aside to rise while the fire in the oven grows hotter. A brewer tends his casks, tapping the wood with his knuckles, listening for the sound that tells him they are ready. From the outskirts, the groan of wheels carries on the still air as farmers lead their oxen toward the gate, carts piled high with produce. Pulled from the earth only hours before. When the church bell tolls, the town stirs as though the sound itself were a command. Shutters creak open, boots strike stone, voices rise. The square grows busy in moments, wooden stalls unfolding like flowers, cloth stretched into shade, baskets overturned onto boards. The butcher lifts his cleaver with practiced ease, the potter arranges jugs in lines as neat as soldiers, the shoemaker sets out boots polished to a sheen. A fishmonger pour. Across wet planks, scales flashing in the first rays of light, the smell sharp and briny. Housewives hurry forward, their baskets swinging, their voices rising in eager questions. The market grows quickly into a storm. A cloth merchant unfurls a bolt of scarlet, the color blazing as women crowd near, stroking the weave, arguing loudly over its worth. A farmer heaps onions into a mound so high that some tumble free, rolling across the cobbles to be chased by children. Stumbles, the shells rattling dangerously as he weaves through the press. Dogs circle the butcher's stall, tails wagging, eyes fixed, tongues lolling. Cats slip beneath tables, their paws light, their eyes sharp, ready to snatch scraps left unattended. The noise is constant, layered, endless. Coins clink, voices clash, laughter erupts, arguments flare, children shriek. The fiddler in the corner plays steadily, his tune weaving through the din, giving shape to the chaos. The juggler tosses balls into the air, bowing low with each catch, his grin broad enough to draw cheers from the crowd. A storyteller holds his listeners in thrall, his arms sweeping wide, his words building worlds of saints, monsters, and miracles. The market is more than trade. It is theater, festival, gathering, and storm. The scents mingle until they seem to weave a fabric of their own. Bread sharp and hot, cheese pungent, fish raw, herbs bright, meat heavy, onions sharp, garlic earthy. And then from merchant's chest, the unexpected notes. Cinnamon sweet, pepper biting, saffron golden, cloves rich and strange. The crowd presses closer, their eyes wide, their purses tight. Few can afford such treasures, yet even the poorest peasant inhales deeply, carrying the memory of faraway lands home in the breath alone. By midday, the heat presses upon the square. Bread stiffens on boards, fish dulls, meat sags upon its hooks, yet the market does not slow, it swells. Guards patrol. Their boots steady, their chainmail glinting, their eyes sharp. Children gape at them, pointing, whispering, half in awe, half in fear. But even the guards cannot resist the square. One accepts a slice of cheese, another drinks gratefully from a mug. Duty and life intermingle, as inseparable here as shadow from stone. Afternoon wanes, and the tide begins to ebb. Housewives clutch baskets heavy with loaves, onions, herbs, and cloth. Children lag behind, weary now, their laughter quieted. Yawns. Merchants tie sacks, fold cloth, stack barrels, their voices low, their movements slower. The fiddler rests his bow, the juggler pockets his tools, the storyteller falls silent, his arms folding into his cloak. Slowly the square empties, the storm fading into hush. Only scraps remain, husks, skins, feathers, scattered across the cobbles, the memory of the day etched faintly in stone. As twilight deepens, smoke rises from chimneys, and the taverns flare into life. Within there, rattle, mugs slam, voices roar. A shepherd and a miller throw arms around one another, shouting a tune until their throats rasp. A fiddler plays again, his bow wilder now, his song quicker, laughter and stamping feet shaking the rafters. A juggler tosses knives this time, his audience roaring approval, the gleam of steel catching the candlelight. Arguments flare, laughter follows, ale spills, and the tavern fills with a storm as fierce as the days. Outside, the square lies hushed, lit by the flicker of torches. Guards patrol slowly, their shadows long across the stones. Lovers wander with hands entwined, their voices soft. A thief moves silently through the dark, his eyes sharp, his steps lighter than air. Dogs curl on doorsteps, ears twitching in sleep, their breath steady. Above, the church bell tolls, slow and deep, marking the hour, reminding all within earshot that the wheel of time turns even as they rest. And when dawn comes once more, the cycle will begin again. The butcher will sharpen, the carts will creak through the gates, the stalls will rise, the storm will swell, the taverns will thunder. The rhythm is eternal, as steady as the seasons, as unbroken as the stone beneath the square, as certain as the breath of the town itself. The medieval market town is a world within walls, a place where the seasons, the harvests, the tides of fortune all meet upon the same stones. Each day is different, yet each day is the same, merchants shouting, children laughing, dogs circling, guards pacing, voices clashing, coins changing hands. It is repetition, yet never dull, a rhythm that turns endlessly, each note slightly changed, each verse familiar. To dwell in such a town is to be carried by that rhythm, from cradle to grave, without ever needing to ask where it leads. The morning begins in silence broken only by labor. Before dawn, farmers lead their carts into the square, the wheels groaning under sacks of grain, baskets of onions. Oxen snort clouds into the chill air, stamping their hooves, shaking their heads against the weight. Beside them, the farmers themselves trudge, cloaks pulled tight, hands rough from work, their breath steady as they guide the beasts forward. A baker, already weary from hours at his oven, sends his apprentice with trays of bread. Loaves stacked so high they threaten to topple with each step. The smell of yeast and smoke drifts ahead of him, announcing his arrival before he speaks a word. Stalls rise swiftly, boards balanced on barrels, cloth stretched across poles to make shade. Merchants unpack their wares with the careful precision of those who have done the same each day for years. Apples are stacked into neat pyramids, herbs spread into fragrant bundles, jugs and bowls lined in rows that catch the light. The butcher sharpens his cleaver, the rasp of steel against stone carrying clear through the square, a sound as certain as the toll of the bell above. A potter wipes his brow as he stacks his wares, his hands careful, his eyes narrow with worry each time one wobbles. By sunrise, the town has awakened and the square fills. Housewives stride in quickly, their baskets empty, their eyes sharp. They move with practiced certainty, first to the bread, then to the cheese, then to the fish, their voices quick and purposeful. Children dart around them, laughing, tripping, chasing one another between the stalls. A boy with a basket of eggs stumbles, nearly falling, one shell cracking in his grasp. The laughter of the crowd rises around him, good-natured, even from the merchants who know they will soon sweep the yoke away. Dogs nose along the cobblestones, their tails wagging, their eyes fixed on the butcher's hooks. Cats slip beneath tables, their paws silent, their tails flicking, their eyes bright with hunger. The noise mounts into thunder. A fishmonger slaps down a gleaming card, its scales glinting silver in the light. Housewives surge forward, prodding, sniffing, haggling with voices sharp enough to cut. A cloth merchant unfurls a bolt of crimson, the color blazing in the sun, drawing women to reach, to tug, to bargain. Coins clink against wood, hands gesture wildly, faces flush with effort and laughter alike. The fiddler in the corner raises his bow, scraping out a tune that threads through the din, giving shape to the storm. A juggler tosses balls high, bowing low, his grin broad as children clap and cheer. A storyteller, voice painting saints and dragons into the air with words, his arms spread wide, his eyes alive with fire. The smells are as thick as the noise. Bread fresh and sharp, fish briny, onions pungent, herbs bright, meat heavy, garlic earthy, animals musky. And from one corner the exotic thread of spice, cinnamon sweet, pepper sharp, saffron golden. The spice merchant opens his chest, the powders within glowing faintly in the light. The crowd presses close, their faces filled with wonder. Hands twitching near their purses. Few will buy, but all will remember, carrying the smell home as though it were treasure. By midday the market swells to its height. The heat presses down, the sun glaring, the air thick. Bread stiffens, fish grows sharper, meat sweats upon its hooks. Dogs pace restlessly, tongues lolling, tails wagging, eyes fixed. Guards patrol slowly, their chainmail glinting, their steps steady, their eyes scanning. Children gape at them, whispering in awe, pointing at the gleam of steel. Yet even the guards pause at stalls, accepting slices of cheese, sipping from mugs, bending for a moment beneath the weight of daily life. Amid the storm, countless small stories unfold. Two women quarrel over onions, their arms flailing, their voices sharp, until one bursts into laughter and the other follows, their argument dissolving into smiles. A miller dusted white with flour haggles for grain, his palms leaving pale smudges upon every board he touched. Upon a barrel, casting dice, muttering curses with each unlucky throw. A pickpocket slips unseen between stalls, his hand quick, his smile hidden, his purse heavy by day's end. As the afternoon wanes, the storm begins to ease. Housewives walk home with baskets heavy, their children trailing weary, their laughter softened into yawns. Merchants tie sacks, fold cloth, stack barrels, their movements slower now, their voices fading. The fiddler rests his bow, the juggler pockets his tools. Storyteller falls silent, his cloak wrapped tight about him. The square empties, the cobblestones bare once more save for scraps, skins, husks, feathers, left scattered in the wake of the tide. Twilight deepens, and the taverns roar awake. Dice scatter across tables, mugs slam, voices rise in song and laughter. A shepherd and a miller throw arms across each other's shoulders, shouting a tune until their throats rasp. A fiddler plays again, his bow wild, his song quick, his foot stamping it. Clap and women laugh. A juggler tosses knives this time, their blades glinting in the candlelight, the crowd roaring its cheer. Smoke curls into the rafters, ale spills, laughter shakes the walls. The tavern is storm enough to rival the market itself. Outside, the square lies hushed, lit only by torchlight. Lovers walk slowly, their hands entwined, their voices soft. Guards pace steadily, their shadows long, their eyes sharp. A thief melts into darkness, his steps silent, his fingers deft. Curl on doorsteps, their tails twitching in sleep. The church bell tolls slow and deep, its sound carrying across the rooftops, reminding all that time does not pause even as they rest. And then dawn will come, and the wheel will turn once more. The baker will knead, the butcher will sharpen, the farmers will drive their carts through the gate. The stalls will rise, the market will swell, the taverns will roar, and the town will breathe. Eternal, unbroken, steady as the stone beneath its feet. The medieval market town lives forever in its rhythm. The market town is a tide that never ceases, a heartbeat that never falters. To those who walk its square each day, it may seem ordinary, just bread, just onions, just clothes and coin. Yet within its noise lies the essence of a world, the voices of mothers and merchants, the laughter of children, the sharp cries of sellers, the patient clink of coin, the endless weaving together of lives. What seems small is, in truth, the town, stronger than walls, older than towers. Before the first color touches the sky, preparations are already underway. In kitchens lit by firelight, bakers shape loaves, their arms heavy with labor, their faces pale with flour. The smell of bread drifts from the ovens, warm and comforting, carrying with it the promise of morning. In barns and sheds, farmers hitch oxen to carts, their voices low, their hands steady. Chickens cluck nervously in wicker cages, sheep shuffle against row. Goats bleat, dogs bark in excitement. The carts creak under their weight, and as the gates open, they roll slowly toward the square, the wheels groaning upon stone. By the time the church bell tolls, the market begins to unfurl. Wooden frames rise swiftly, cloth pulled tight, planks laid across barrels. Merchants set their wares in neat rows, apples stacked until they glisten, onions heaped in pale mounds, herbs tied into fragrant bundles. A butcher strings pork upon hook. As he tests its edge, a potter wipes the glaze from bowls and jugs, arranging them in towers so precise they seem ready to sing when struck. A shoemaker hammers nails into leather, his stall already scattered with scraps and tools. The sun rises, and with it, the crowd surges. Housewives stride quickly into the square, baskets swinging, children trailing at their skirts. Their voices fill the air as they haggle, question, demand. A fishmonger slaps a gleaming herring onto his board, water. Spraying as he calls out his price. Housewives press forward, prodding, sniffing, haggling with laughter and scowls alike. A boy lugs a basket of eggs, his steps clumsy, one egg slipping free and cracking upon the cobblestones, its yolk pooling in the dust. Children shriek with laughter, chasing a runaway chicken whose feathers scatter through the air. Noise swells into a storm. A cloth merchant holds aloft a bolt of blue so bright it dazzles in the sun. Women push close, touching, tugging. Their voices sharp with arguments that end as quickly as they begin. A spice merchant lifts the lid of his chest, releasing scents of cinnamon, pepper, saffron, and cloves. The crowd leans close, inhaling deeply, though few dare to part with coin. A fiddler plays in the corner, his bow scraping out a tune, his foot stamping time. A juggler tosses balls high, bowing low with each catch, his grin broad, children clapping and squealing in delight. A storyteller raises his voice, shapy. Monsters out of words, his arms spread wide, his eyes alive with fire. The smells are thick, layered one upon another, bread hot and sharp, fish pungent, meat heavy, herbs bright, onions biting, garlic earthy, animals musky. Cats slip beneath tables, tails twitching, paws light. Dogs pace beneath the butcher's stall, their eyes fixed, their tongues lolling. A pickpocket moves silently through the crowd, his hand deft, his eyes sharp, his smile hidden as he gathers coins without a whir. Patrol steadily, their boots striking the stones, their chainmail gleaming, their eyes sharp. Children point at them, whispering in awe, yet even the guards pause for slices of cheese or sips of ale, their sternness softening into smiles. By midday, the square is a tide. The sun burns overhead, the air heavy, the noise unbroken. Bread stiffens, fish dulls, meat sags upon its hooks, yet still the crowd presses forward. Housewives fan themselves with their shawls, bargaining with laughter and sharp voices alike. Merchants raise their cries higher, pushing to be heard above the din. The fiddler's bow moves faster, the juggler's tricks more daring, the storyteller's words more vivid, as though the heat itself fuels their fire. As afternoon drifts into evening, the tide begins to ebb. Housewives return home with baskets heavy, their children drooping with weariness, their voices quieter now. Merchants fold cloth, tie sacks, stack barrels, their movements slower, their shoulders bent. The fiddler rests his bow, the juggler pockets his balls, the storyteller pulls his cloak close. Slowly the square loosens, its stones revealed beneath the retreating tide of the day. Only scraps remain, skins, husks, feathers, scattered like echoes across the cobblestones. When twilight spreads, smoke rises from chimneys, and the taverns thunder awake. Inside, mugs slam, dice scatter, voices roar. A shepherd and a miller throw arms across each other's shoulders, shouting songs until their throats rasp. A fiddler plays once more, his tune quicker now, his bow scraping wildly, men stamping their feet in rhythm. A juggler tosses knives this time, their blades flashing in candlelight, his audience roaring with glee. Laughter and quarrel mingle, ale spills, the tavern walls shake with storm. Outside, the square lies still, torchlight flickering against stone. Lovers walk hand in hand, their voices hushed, their steps slow. Guards patrol with weary eyes, their shadows stretching long. Across the cobblestones, dogs curl upon doorsteps, ears twitching in dreams. A thief slips through the dark, his hand quick, his movements silent, his body melting into shadow. Above it all, the church bell tolls, its voice deep, its sound carrying through the night as if time itself calls the town to rest. And yet, rest is never more than pause. For when dawn comes again, the cycle will turn. The baker will rise, the butcher will sharpen, the farmers will drive their carts through the gate. The stalls will grow, the noise will thunder, the taverns will roar. The town will breathe once more, steady, eternal, its rhythm endless as the seasons, its heart as certain as the stone beneath its square. The medieval market town is a rhythm that no silence can break. Its life does not belong to a single hour, nor even to a single day. It belongs to the turning of weeks and seasons, to the steady march of years. For each sunrise, there is a stall being lifted, a cart being pushed, being set upon a board. For each sunset, there is a mug being raised, a song shouted into smoky rafters, a bell tolling to remind all who listen that time is as steady as breath. Before dawn, when most of the town still sleeps, the first sounds creep into the quiet. A baker's door creaks open, the smell of yeast and smoke spilling into the narrow lane. His apprentice stumbles beneath the weight of trays stacked with loaves, the crusts already crackling, steam rising into the fields. The low groan of carts carries toward the gate, wheels straining under sacks of cabbages, crates of apples, bundles of herbs. Oxen stamp their hooves, their breath clouding in the dim light, their horns swaying as the farmers coax them forward. By the time the first bell tolls from the church tower, the square has begun to change. Wooden frames rise like ribs across the cobblestones, cloth stretched overhead to make shade, planks balanced upon barrels, baskets overturned, spilling into neat displays. The butcher sharpens his cleaver, each scrape ringing loud. The potter wipes glaze from his bowls, stacking them into towers so precise they tremble with the slightest touch. A shoemaker hammers nails into a boot sole, his head bent, his stall littered with scraps of leather. A fishmonger pours silver-scaled herring across wet boards, their gills red, their smell sharp enough to cut through the morning air. And then comes the flood. Housewives stride into the square. With baskets slung against their hips, their skirts brushing stone, their eyes sharp and ready. Children dart behind them, their voices high, their feet quick as they chase one another between the stalls. A farmer heaps onions so high that some tumble free, rolling across the cobblestones. A boy carrying a basket of eggs stumbles, one shell cracking in his grasp, the yolk dripping yellow down his sleeve. Laughter bursts around him, rising above the din. The noise builds into thunder. Merchant. Shout over one another, each voice louder than the last. A cloth seller unfurls a bolt of crimson, its color blazing in the sun. Women press close, stroking the weave, tugging at the edges, their voices sharp with bargaining. A spice merchant opens his chest, releasing the scent of cinnamon, pepper, cloves, saffron. Treasures so rare they seem to belong to another world. The people lean close, their faces filled with wonder, though most hold their purses shut. A monk sits quietly at the fountain, selling herbs for coughs and fevers, his voice calm, nearly swallowed by the storm of sound. The smells of the market are a tapestry of their own. Bread hot and sharp, meat heavy and raw, fish briny, herbs bright, onions pungent, garlic earthy, animals musky. Cats slip beneath stalls, their tails flicking, their paws light, their eyes sharp. Dogs circle the butcher's hooks, their tongues lolling, their eyes fixed. A thief moves silently through the throng, his hand deft, his steps careful, his purse swelling as the day grows long. Guards march in steady rhythm, their chainmail glinting, their eyes sharp, their boots striking stone. Children stare wide-eyed, pointing, whispering as though in the presence of giants. By midday, the market has reached its height. The sun presses down, heat thick in the air, smells sharper, voices louder. Housewives fan themselves with shawls as they argue with merchants, their faces flushed, their coins clutched tight. A fiddler scrapes a tune, his bow moving faster now, his foot stamping time. A juggler tosses wooden balls high, bowing so low the crowd laughs and cheers. A storyteller lifts his voice above it all, weaving giants and saints, storms and miracles, his arms carving vast shapes in the air. For a moment, the market is not just trade, but theater, festival, and storm all at once. In the afternoon, the tide begins to ebb. Housewives carry baskets heavy with bread, cheese, herbs, cloth. Children draw. Voices quieter, their laughter faded into yawns. Merchants tie sacks, fold cloth, pack barrels, their shoulders sagging with fatigue. The fiddler rests his bow, the juggler pockets his tools, the storyteller lowers his cloak about his shoulders. The storm fades into hush, leaving only scraps behind, skins, husks, feathers, scattered across the cobblestones like echoes of the day. When twilight deepens, the taverns ignite. Mugs slam, dice scatter, voices roar. A shepherd smelling of sheep and miller powdered white with flour throw arms about each other's shoulders, shouting songs until their voices break. The fiddler plays again, his tune rougher now, quicker, his bow scraping wildly. A juggler tosses knives this time, their blades flashing in candlelight, his audience roaring with drunken glee. Smoke thickens, ale spills, quarrels rise and dissolve into laughter. The tavern is a market of its own, fueled not by bread and cloth but by ale and song. Outside, the square lies still, lit by torchlight. Lovers wander slowly, hands entwined, their whispers low. Guards patrol with weary eyes, their shadows long against the walls. Dogs curl upon doorsteps, tails twitching in dreams. A thief slips into shadow, his steps light, his hand quick. The church bell tolls, deep and slow, carrying across the rooftops, reminding the town that though the day has ended, the rhythm has not. For when dawn comes again, the wheel will turn once more. The baker will knead, the butcher will sharpen, The farmers will roll their carts into the square. The stalls will rise, the storm will thunder, the taverns will roar, and the town will breathe again. Eternal, unbroken, steady as the stone beneath its feet, the medieval market town lives on in its endless rhythm. Night settles like a cloak over the market town, yet even in silence, the square carries the memory of the day. The cobblestones still echo faintly with footsteps, as though the air itself remembers the rush of boots, the clatter of carts, the cries of merchants. The fountain at its heart murmurs softly, water spilling into stone as steady as breath, its voice unbroken though all else lies still. Torches burn low upon their brackets, their flames bending in the night wind, casting long, restless shadows against the walls. Within the taverns, life lingers. Mugs clink, dice scatter, voices thunder and fall into laughter. A fiddler draws a wild tune, faster and rougher than his morning melodies, his bow scrapey. Sharp across the strings, his foot stamping until the floor shakes. Men shout songs together, arms thrown across shoulders, their voices thick with ale and joy. A juggler tosses knives that flash in the candlelight, his grin wide, the crowd roaring each time a blade spins dangerously close. Smoke curls upward into blackened rafters, mingling with the smell of ale and sweat, filling every breath. Outside, the square is another world. Lovers wander slowly across the stones, their hands entwined. Their voices no louder than whispers, their steps soft as if afraid to disturb the hush. Guards move in steady rhythm, their chainmail catching torchlight, their shadows stretching long across the ground. A thief slips into darkness, his movements light, his hand quick, his eyes sharp as he vanishes between alley walls. Dogs curl into doorways, their ears twitching, their tails flicking as they sleep. Cats prowl with silent paws, their eyes gleaming, their bodies weaving between barrels and shadows. Above, the church bell tolls, its sound deep and solemn, carrying far beyond the town walls, into the fields where farmers sleep, into the woods where paths vanish, into the ears of all who still wake. Each toll marks not an end, but a turning. For as the bell fades, the town does not die, it waits, and soon enough the cycle will stir again. In kitchens, bakers will knead dough, their hands white with flour, their ovens glowing with fire. Farmers will rouse their oxen faster, guiding carts heavy with produce toward the gate. Merchants will unfold their stalls, cloth stretched across wooden frames, barrels tipped into place. The butcher will sharpen his cleaver, the potter will stack his jugs, the shoemaker will hammer leather into soles. By sunrise, the square will bloom once more. Housewives will stride in with baskets, children will chase laughter across the stones, merchants will shout, coins will clink, spice will rise, fish will gleam, bread will steam. The fiddler will scrape his bow, the juggler will bow low, the storyteller will lift his voice into the air. The square will roar again, alive with storm, alive with trade, alive with the rhythm that never falters. For the medieval market town is not a day, nor a season, nor even a lifetime. It is a breath unending, drawn and released again and again, as certain as the turn of the wheel, as steady as the stone beneath its feet. It does not end, it endures, and in its enduring it tells the story of all who have lived, and all who will live within its walls.